It began with a broken watch, a child's gift, small enough to fit in a pocket, yet heavy enough to change the course of a man's life. When Officer Lucas Keller first met Emma, a bright-eyed little girl playing alone in the park, he never imagined that her innocent gesture would reopen the most haunting case of his career. 6 months earlier, a young woman was murdered. The suspect walked free. The trail had gone cold. Until a German shepherd named Rex and a watch that no longer ticked whispered the truth that no one else could hear. But this isn't just a story about solving a crime. It's about loyalty, love, and how sometimes the smallest hearts carry the biggest courage. As the rain falls and time stands still, one man will learn that justice doesn't always come from the system. Sometimes it comes from the silent eyes of the one who never stopped believing in him. Stay with me, because by the time this story ends, you'll understand why some watches stop and why some hearts never do. The first light crept over the rooftops of the little European town like a secret unwilling to be spoken. Mist clung to the narrow streets, turning the cobblestones into mirrors that caught the faint shimmer of dawn. Everything looked still, too still for a place that once buzzed with laughter spilling from cafes and bakeries. Now, each sound seemed to hesitate, afraid to disturb the fragile calm that hung in the air. Officer Lucas Keller walked the same route every morning, his boots echoing softly against the stones. Beside him padded Rex, the German shepherd whose black and tan coat gleamed even in the pale fog. The dog moved with the quiet confidence of a soldier, ears twitching at every sound. They were a pair shaped by routine and loss. The man and the dog, who had both seen too much. A faint breeze stirred a cluster of faded wanted posters plastered to a wall. The face of the murder victim, Elena Voss, age 29, smiled out from beneath the tape, her image blurred by rain. Information leading to arrest, the headline still promised, though everyone in town had stopped believing months ago. The paper flapped softly, like a whisper asking to be remembered. Lucas paused, the smell of damp earth mixed with the sharp tang of old metal from the street lamps. He adjusted his coat collar and watched Rex lift his nose, drawing in the scents of the waking town. The dog's tail gave a cautious flick. He sensed Lucas's tension, the way animals sense storms before they break. It's been 6 months, Lucas thought. 6 months, and nothing. No prints, no footage, no witness who saw more than a shadow. The brass nameplate on his chest felt heavier each day. People still greeted him politely, but their eyes asked the question he hated most. Have you caught him yet? He hadn't, and that failure had begun to hollow him out. They reached the town square, once the heart of weekend markets. The fountain in the center had stopped running. Moss climbed its edges where coins used to glint. Rex sniffed near the base, his nose tracing invisible patterns over the stone. His body stiffened for an instant. Something there, a memory buried in scent. He let out a low whine. Lucas crouched beside him. "Nothing, boy?" he asked softly, though he already knew the answer. Rex's nose brushed the stones again. Then he huffed and looked up, eyes gleaming with a question his handler couldn't answer. The man rubbed his ear. "Yeah, I feel it too, like the town's holding its breath." A church bell tolled in the distance, slow, deliberate notes rolling through the fog. The sound bounced between the buildings, echoing longer than it should. Each ring reminded Lucas of the moment the call came in that night. A scream near the riverside, a body, a trail that ended in darkness. He had arrived too late. He always arrived too late. He lit a cigarette, watched the smoke twist and fade. Rex's gaze followed the curling gray ribbon, as though searching for meaning inside it. Lucas smiled faintly. "Don't look at me like that. You don't like the smell, I know." He took one last drag and crushed it under his heel. "Habit's all I've got left." They moved on. A bakery opened its shutters. The scent of fresh bread drifted through the chill. For a fleeting second, normal life tried to return. An old woman sweeping her doorstep nodded at them. Her eyes lingered on Rex. The townspeople still trusted the dog more than the badge. Perhaps because a dog never lies. The path led them past the police station, a squat stone building whose paint peeled in long curls. Through the window, Lucas could see the evidence board still covered in photos, lines of red string connecting questions that went nowhere. He hated that board. It reminded him of a map with no roads home. He stopped under the awning and stared at it through the glass. Elena's eyes in the photo seemed to accuse him directly. He murmured, almost inaudibly, "I'm sorry." Rex pressed his muzzle against Lucas's leg, sensing the heaviness in his voice. The simple touch steadied him, better than any words could. The day brightened slightly as the fog began to lift, revealing the muted colors of the town. Terracotta roofs, gray chimneys, shuttered windows with flower boxes long gone dry. A delivery truck rattled down the lane, scattering pigeons. Life continued, indifferent to grief. They circled back toward the square once more. Rex tugged gently at the leash, stopping at a lamppost near the fountain. He sniffed again, pawed the ground, and looked up expectantly. Lucas followed his gaze. There was nothing, just the echo of footsteps from another street, the faint hum of power lines, the sigh of wind through empty alleys. Still, a prickle ran along Lucas's spine. Something in the air felt unfinished, like a melody cut off mid-note. He knelt beside Rex and whispered, "You remember, don't you? The night we found her." The dog gave a soft rumble, half growl, half lament. Lucas swallowed hard. "I know. We missed something." A clock in the cafe window struck 7. The rhythmic ticking seemed louder than usual, each second a reminder of time slipping past them. He looked down at his wristwatch. 9:47. The time etched forever in his memory. The moment Elena's life ended. The hands of his own watch moved on, but in his mind, they always circled back to that number. What kind of man lets time move on when someone's ended like that? He closed his eyes for a heartbeat. When he opened them, Rex had already sat at attention, watching a child on the far side of the square chase a red balloon. Her laughter broke through the heavy air, pure and bright. For the first time that morning, Lucas felt something loosen inside his chest. Maybe innocence was still possible here. Even after all the darkness, the balloon slipped from the child's grasp and floated upward. She giggled, waving as it rose. Rex's ears perked, following its path until it disappeared into the clouds. Lucas chuckled quietly. "Let it go, boy. Not everything that flies needs to come back down." He turned toward the station again, tugging the leash gently. "Come on, partner. Another day. Another circle." Rex obeyed, tail low but steady, matching Lucas's weary pace. As they disappeared into the thinning mist, the camera of the mind would linger on the fountain, the still water, the flapping posters, and that uneasy calm that blanketed the square. Somewhere beneath the stones, secrets waited for breath, and the town waited for someone brave or desperate enough to listen. The morning silence held its note a little longer, as if time itself refused to move, until justice did. The morning had warmed just enough for the mist to rise from the cobblestones and drift toward the park on the edge of town. It was a small, quiet place, a cluster of benches, a sandbox, and a few tired trees that leaned slightly, as if listening to the whispers of the past. Lucas and Rex often ended their patrol here, where the noise of duty softened into the sound of rustling leaves and distant church bells. Today, the park felt different. The world was still half asleep, but in the far corner, where wild daisies grew through cracks in the old pavement, a little girl sat cross-legged, humming softly. Her name was Emma. 7 years old, hair the color of wheat, and a face that still believed every day held something good. Her small hands were busy weaving daisy stems into a crooked crown. Rex spotted her first. His ears perked up, tail giving a cautious wag. Lucas followed his gaze and smiled faintly. "You remember her, don't you? The baker's daughter," he murmured. "Go on then. Say hello." The dog trotted forward, paws whispering through grass still damp with dew. Emma looked up at the sound, and her face lit like sunlight breaking through clouds. "Rex!" she squealed, springing to her feet. "You came back!" Before Lucas could warn her, she wrapped her arms around the shepherd's neck. Rex stood perfectly still, patient and gentle. His tail swayed once, twice, a silent acknowledgement of her affection. Lucas watched from a few steps away. For a moment, he forgot. The case files waiting on his desk, the unsolved questions that weighed on his chest. The laughter of the child felt like a language the world had forgotten. Emma leaned close to Rex's ear and whispered something secret, as if the dog could carry her words into dreams. Then she pulled back and said brightly, "Wait! I have something for you." She ran to her small satchel beside the bench and rummaged through it with theatrical importance. After a few moments, she returned, both hands cupped together, as though holding a treasure. She knelt and opened them carefully. Inside lay a small wristwatch, silver-plated but worn, its glass face cracked near the edge. The hands had stopped, frozen forever at 9:47. "It's for you," she said solemnly. "A gift." Lucas blinked. "For him?" Emma nodded. "Uh-huh. It doesn't tick anymore, see? So time can't take it away." She smiled proudly at her explanation, holding it out toward Rex, who sniffed it curiously and gave a soft huff. Lucas crouched down beside them. The morning sun caught the metal surface of the watch, glinting faintly, like an eye opening. Something about it tugged at his mind. The simple design, the narrow leather strap, the faint engraving near the clasp. He had seen it before. "Where did you get this, Emma?" he asked gently. The girl tilted her head, thinking. "It was in the box of old toys behind our garage. Mama said I could have it. I cleaned it, but it still doesn't work." Her innocence disarmed him. He smiled, though his eyes stayed on the frozen hands of the watch. 9:47. The same numbers that haunted his reports, his dreams, his guilt. Rex sat quietly, his dark eyes shifting between man and child. The breeze carried the scent of daisies and old rust. Somewhere a swing creaked in rhythm with the pulse Lucas could feel rising in his throat. He brushed his thumb lightly over the cracked glass. The surface was rough, scarred by time and something sharper. A fragment, maybe. He felt an echo of a memory, a flash of that terrible night, the flicker of streetlights, the call on the radio, the phone in the victim's hand that had also stopped at that same cursed minute. But he shook his head, forcing the thought away. Not here. Not now. Emma was still watching him, her smile fading slightly. "You don't like it?" she asked, voice small. Lucas looked up quickly. No, I do. It's beautiful. Thank you, Emma." He tried to sound light. "Rex will treasure it." She grinned again, reassured. "You should put it on him. Maybe he'll be the only dog who can tell when it's snack time." He laughed softly, the sound rough but sincere. "Maybe, but I think it suits me better, don't you think?" He fastened the strap loosely around his wrist, feeling the cold metal press against his skin. The watch face gleamed once more before settling into stillness. Emma nodded, satisfied. "Now you can both share it. You and Rex. That way you'll never forget each other." Lucas froze for a second, caught off guard by the purity of her words. Never forget each other. He met her gaze, blue, trusting, untouched by fear, and felt a warmth rise in his chest that he hadn't felt in months. "Thank you, little one," he said quietly. "That's a promise, then." She smiled, twirling once with her daisy crown before setting it gently on Rex's head. The dog blinked, then sneezed, which made her burst into laughter. Lucas couldn't help laughing too, the sound blending with hers into something fragile, but healing. The sunlight broke fully through the clouds, scattering gold across the park. For that brief moment, everything seemed right. The murder, the guilt, the endless investigation all forgotten. Just a man, a child, and a loyal dog beneath a morning sky. But as Emma turned to chase a butterfly, Lucas's gaze fell again on the motionless hands of the watch. The numbers 9 and 47 gleamed faintly, almost mocking him. The air around him seemed to tighten. Where have I seen this before? The image flickered in his mind. A photo from the evidence board. The victim's wrist bare except for a faint tan line where a watch had once been. Could it be? No. It was impossible. He exhaled slowly, forcing himself to smile. "Come on, Rex," he murmured. "Let's not chase ghosts today." The dog stood, shaking the daisy crown loose, and followed him as he turned toward the gate. Behind them, Emma waved with both hands, her laughter trailing after them like wind chimes. "Bye, Lucas. Bye, Rex." He lifted a hand in return. "See you soon, Emma." As they walked away, Lucas felt the weight of the broken watch against his wrist. Light as a child's gift, heavy as the truth it silently carried. Rex glanced up at him, ears flicking, and for a moment Lucas thought he saw recognition in those dark eyes too. Something unspoken passed between them. An instinct, a warning, a promise that the quiet of this town was only pretending to be peace. The park behind them shimmered in sunlight, but Lucas could no longer feel its warmth. He touched the cracked glass of the watch once more and whispered to himself, "It doesn't tick, so time can't take it away." The words lingered in the air, long after they were gone. The town had long fallen asleep, but the light in Lucas's office still burned. Outside, rain tapped softly on the window panes, each drop marking the rhythm of a restless conscience. The small desk lamp threw a lonely circle of yellow over piles of files, Police reports, photographs, timelines, fragments of a truth that refused to fit together. And there, lying in the center of it all, was the broken watch. Its face gleamed faintly in the lamplight. The hands remained frozen. 9:47. The same hour that haunted him since the night of the murder. He turned it over again and again, as if the truth were hidden somewhere in the scratches on its back. He rubbed his tired eyes. The clock on the wall ticked past midnight, each sound louder than it should be. "Why you, Emma?" he muttered softly. "Of all the things in this town, why would a child end up with this?" Rex lifted his head from the floor, ears twitching. The dog had been dozing near the heater, but now he rose and padded closer, resting his chin on Lucas's knee. His eyes, dark and steady, reflected the lamplight like two pieces of amber. Lucas sighed, stroking his head. "You feel it too, huh?" he whispered. "Something's wrong. Something we missed." He opened the main case file again. Elena Voss, 30 years old, florist, found dead near the Riverside Path 6 months ago. Cause of death: blunt trauma to the head. Time of death: approximately 9:47 p.m. He flipped to the next page. Victor Halden, prime suspect, businessman, clean record, airtight alibi. Witnesses had placed him at a charity gala at 9:50, 10 kilometers away, 3 minutes apart. 3 minutes. That had mocked Lucas for half a year. He leaned back, staring at the ceiling. The rain outside grew heavier, drumming against the glass like impatient fingers. Unless time lied. The phrase crept into his thoughts, uninvited. He sat forward again, pulling the photographs closer. The victim's broken glasses, the unfinished text message on her phone that stopped mid-sentence, the faint smear of blood leading off the path and vanishing beneath the park benches. He remembered the night clearly, the smell of wet grass, the buzz of distant sirens, Rex's low growl as they found the body under the pale glow of the streetlights. He had thought he'd seen every detail, but now, with the watch ticking silently in his mind, everything felt newly suspicious. Rex whined softly, pacing the floor. His tail brushed against the chair leg, then stilled. Lucas reached for his jacket. "Come on, partner," he said quietly. "Let's go for a walk." The rain had eased by the time they reached the Riverside Park, but fog rolled thick and low, curling around the lampposts like ghosts reluctant to leave. The path glistened with moisture, every puddle reflecting the amber streetlights above. Rex walked ahead, nose to the ground, his leash slack in Lucas's hand. The air smelled of wet earth and rust, the kind of scent that clings to forgotten places. Lucas's boots sank slightly into the mud as he stepped off the paved path toward the spot where it had all ended. The bench still stood there, damp and warped from weather, a silent witness to what had happened. He crouched beside it, his flashlight beam cutting through the fog. The ground had changed with the seasons, but not enough to erase the memory etched into it. He could still see faint indentations where the body had lain, the grass thinner there, darker. Rex sniffed along the base of the bench, tail low, movements deliberate. Then he stopped. Suddenly, completely. His body stiffened, one paw lifted midair. "What is it, boy?" Lucas asked, voice barely above a whisper. Rex lowered his nose and let out a low whine. Lucas followed his gaze. Beneath the bench, just visible in the beam of the flashlight, something metallic glinted faintly through the damp soil. He reached down, brushing away the dirt with his gloved hand. The smell of rust rose sharply, mixed with a faint, oily residue, a scent unmistakable to someone who'd spent years around evidence lockers. "Oil and iron," he murmured, "like clockwork grease." Rex sniffed again, pawing lightly at the spot. Lucas's pulse quickened. He took out a small evidence bag from his pocket and retrieved the object. It was no longer a full mechanism, just a tiny gear, tarnished but familiar. He turned it in the light. The edges were engraved with faint notches, the kind used in watchmaking. He glanced down at Rex, who stared back with calm intensity. "You still remember the scent, don't you, boy?" Rex gave a soft bark, low and certain. Lucas's throat tightened. He looked out toward the river. The water moved slowly, reflecting fractured light. Somewhere out there, the truth had been buried, not in distance, but in time. He sat on the bench, the same bench where he'd once sat months ago, head in hands, admitting defeat. The night air was colder now, or maybe it was just the weight of realization pressing against him. He held the small gear next to Emma's broken watch. The fit was too precise to be coincidence. The same maker, the same oil scent, the same second that refused to move past 9:47. If the suspect could tamper with watches, what else could he change? He stood abruptly, heart pounding. "Rex," he said, voice steadier now, "I think we've been looking at time the wrong way." The dog tilted his head, waiting, not as what tells us when something happened, but as what he made us believe happened. Lightning flickered far off in the distance, illuminating the faint outlines of the trees. The sound reached them a few seconds later, like the echo of a warning. Lucas looked once more at the frozen watch face in his hand, then back at the park. The fog shifted, curling like breath. The air seemed to whisper, something he couldn't quite hear, a secret waiting to be remembered. He pocketed the watch and the tiny gear, tightening his coat against the cold. "Come on, partner," he said. "Looks like we've got a clockmaker to visit." Rex barked once, sharp and eager, and together they disappeared into the mist, leaving the empty bench behind. The silent witness, the scent of oil and metal still clinging beneath it, and the feeling that somewhere, time itself had been used as a weapon. The next morning came gray and thin, sunlight struggling through a ceiling of low clouds. Lucas hadn't slept. The scent of rust and oil still clung to his hands, even after washing them. On the passenger seat of his car lay two things: the tiny gear he'd found beneath the bench, sealed in an evidence bag, and Emma's broken watch, its hands forever frozen at 9:47. He parked in front of a small yellow house on the outskirts of town. Emma's home. Smoke curled lazily from the chimney, the kind that made the place look warm from the outside, but never quite reached the chill inside him. Rex shifted in the back seat, restless. "Easy, boy," Lucas murmured, reaching back to pat his head. "We just need a few answers." He climbed the short path to the porch, boots crunching against scattered pebbles. When Emma's mother opened the door, her face lit with a polite but tired smile. "Officer Keller," she greeted softly. "Is something wrong?" Lucas returned the smile, gentle but serious. "Nothing urgent. I just need to ask a few questions about something Emma found." At the mention of her daughter, the woman's expression softened. "She's at school. But please, come in." The house smelled faintly of flour and lavender soap. Photographs lined the hallway, birthdays, summer picnics, a life unscarred by violence. Lucas hesitated by the dining table, where a cup of coffee steamed beside a half-folded newspaper. He placed the broken watch on the wooden surface, its cracked glass catching a sliver of light. "Do you recognize this?" he asked. Emma's mother leaned closer. "Oh, yes, that old thing. Emma said it was from the box of tools in the garage. My husband was about to throw everything out, but she wanted to play with it." Her husband appeared from the next room, wiping grease from his hands with a rag. "Morning, officer. What's this about?" Lucas nodded respectfully. "Just trying to trace where this came from. You mentioned a box of tools?" The man frowned slightly, thinking. "Yeah, we had some old stuff from when the neighbor helped fix our garage door last spring. He tinkers with machines, watches, clocks, radios, anything that ticks." He chuckled briefly. "Nice fella. Always offering to fix things for folks around here." Lucas's gaze sharpened. "Your neighbor's name?" "Victor Halden. Lives 2 houses down." The sound of the name seemed to drain all warmth from the room. The same name that had haunted Lucas's reports for months. Emma's mother, unaware of the tension, continued. "He gave Emma that watch after he finished fixing the motor. Said it didn't work anymore, but she liked the sparkle." Lucas exhaled slowly. His heart beat faster, the quiet thud echoing in his ears. "Did he come inside your garage often?" The father shrugged. "A few times. We didn't think much of it." "Why?" Lucas closed his notebook and forced a small smile. "Just routine. Thank you for your time." He left before they could ask more. Back at the station, the rain had started again, fine, cold drizzle streaking the windows. Lucas sat in the evidence room under the hum of fluorescent lights. He laid the watch beside the photograph from the crime scene. The victim's pale hand, fingers curled as if reaching for help, shards of glass scattered near her wrist. He zoomed in on the photo. One shard caught the reflection of the camera flash, jagged, sharp-edged, faintly curved. The same curvature as the crack running across Emma's watch face. His fingers trembled slightly as he aligned the 2 pieces in his mind. It was a perfect match. He reached for the file again. Elena's official time of death, 9:47 p.m. He stared at the watch. 9:47. 3 minutes, he whispered. 3 damn minutes. Rex, lying beside his chair, lifted his head. His ears twitched, eyes fixed on Lucas. The air felt heavy, electric, as if the room itself was holding its breath. Lucas's mind raced. Victor Halden, the man obsessed with fixing things that measured time. The man whose alibi relied on a clock. He rose abruptly, pacing. He didn't just fake his story, he muttered. He faked the time. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, flickering. He grabbed the evidence photos, spreading them across the table, the broken phone, the glasses, the watch, the half-finished message that read, "He's here." The words had always chilled him, but now they rang louder. He's here. Victor had been there. He crouched beside Rex, placing a hand on the dog's strong neck. "You remember him, don't you, boy? The scent from that night." Rex let out a low, steady bark, not loud, but certain. It reverberated through the quiet room like truth finding its voice. Lucas swallowed hard. "Yeah, I thought so. He picked up the watch again. Its silence felt deafening now. He turned it under the light, noticing the faintest engraving on the inside rim. HM47. Probably the initials of the maker. But his mind couldn't shake the number's repetition. He placed the watch beside the small gear he'd found and took a slow breath. The pieces fit together like parts of a confession. The same oil scent, the same precision, the same lie. He whispered, almost to himself, "This isn't a coincidence." The words hung in the room, heavy as judgment. Rex shifted, resting his head on Lucas's knee again, his warm breath grounding the officer's spinning thoughts. Outside, thunder rolled softly, the kind that promised more rain. Lucas looked toward the window, where the faint reflection of the watch shimmered like an unblinking eye. "You clever bastard," he said quietly, voice tightening with fury and awe. "You built your alibi, out of time itself." He turned off the lamp, pocketed the watch, and straightened his coat. Rex stood instantly, alert, tail poised. "Come on, partner," Lucas said, his voice low but steady. "Let's see how long a lie can last, before it breaks." As they left the room, the rain outside began to fall harder, each drop tapping against the window like the ticking of a clock that refused to stop. Relentless, accusatory, counting down to the moment truth would surface. And somewhere in the distance, unseen yet certain, the gears of justice began to turn. The precinct was already humming when Lucas stepped through the doors, rainwater dripping from his coat. The air inside smelled of stale coffee, cheap aftershave, and resignation. The same scent that clung to every failed investigation. He clutched the evidence bag in one hand, the broken watch glinting faintly inside, like a trapped heartbeat. Rex padded close behind him, paws silent on the worn tiles. He didn't bother hanging his coat. He walked straight down the hallway toward the glass office at the end, Captain Earhart's domain. Through the fogged window, he could see the man already at his desk, tie loosened, glasses perched on his nose, scrolling through reports that probably blurred together into one endless sea of paperwork. Lucas knocked once, then entered. Earhart looked up, brow furrowed. "You look like hell, Keller. You haven't been home again, have you?" "Not since last night," Lucas replied, voice tight. "But I think I finally have something." He placed the evidence bag on the desk. The captain's eyes flicked to it with mild disinterest. "Another watch?" "The watch," Lucas corrected. "The one Emma had. It matches a fragment from the crime scene. And the time, 9:47. It's exact. It's the moment Elena Voss was killed." Earhart sighed, leaning back. "We've been over this. The suspect's alibi is solid." "Maybe too solid," Lucas countered. He opened the file, pulling out photos, reports, and the tiny gear he'd found beneath the park bench. "I found this near the body. Same oil and metal used in Halden's workshop. He's a watchmaker, sir. He could have tampered with clocks, changed timestamps, built his alibi around it." Earhart rubbed his temples. "You're chasing ghosts. You have no direct proof he touched the victim, no witness placing him there. Just," he gestured to the bag, "a broken toy." The words hit like a slap. Lucas felt his pulse throb in his jaw. "This isn't a toy. It's evidence. You're telling me a man who collects watches, who lives 2 blocks from the crime scene, who conveniently fixes timepieces for half the neighborhood, just happened to give a little girl a watch that stopped at the exact minute the victim died?" Silence filled the office, heavy and electric. Earhart finally looked up, expression softened but weary. Even if you're right, Lucas, it's circumstantial. You bring me something tangible, something I can take to a judge, and I'll reopen it. Until then, the case stays closed. Lucas clenched his fists. So we let him walk because the clock says so? Because the law says so, Earhart replied quietly. The words echoed in Lucas's head as he left the room. Rex followed, tail low, sensing his partner's storm. The evidence room felt colder now. Lucas spread everything across the table once again. The watch, the photos, the logs, the satellite map of the town. The hum of the overhead light was relentless, like the ticking of a clock he couldn't turn off. Rex lay near the door, head resting on his paws. His ears flicked every time Lucas muttered under his breath. There has to be something, Lucas whispered, scrolling through old security footage. The date of the murder. The exact time. 9:47. 9:48. 9:49. He paused the frame on the gas station camera near the highway. There, a car pulling out of the lot at 9:55. Same model, same plates. Victor Halden, the man's alibi. He zoomed in. The timestamp blinked clearly on the corner of the screen. 21:55:02. But something felt off. The numbers weren't perfectly aligned. He rewound, slowing the frame. Each second ticked by too smoothly, too exact. Digital clocks never ran that evenly, unless someone had tampered with them. Rex whined softly, tail brushing the floor. Lucas looked at the dog, then back to the footage. You see it too, huh? The rhythm. Too clean. He dug through the technical logs from the gas station system. His fingers flew across the keyboard. Then he found it. A maintenance entry recorded a week before the murder. Technician, V. Halden. His pulse kicked up. He fixed their camera clock, Lucas said under his breath. He didn't just alter time, he rewrote it. He leaned back, running a hand over his face. Months of frustration, guilt, and exhaustion swirled into a single thread of revelation. Halden's entire alibi, the gala, the witnesses, the footage, all built on the same lie. A clock adjusted by the man who understood time better than anyone. He stood abruptly. Come on, Rex. We're going to the garage. The sun had slipped behind thick clouds again by the time Lucas pulled up outside Halden's workshop. The building sat half-hidden behind overgrown ivy. Its sign faded. Halden Repairs. Clocks, watches, timepieces. The smell of burnt oil and brass hung in the damp air. Rex jumped out, nose to the ground immediately. Lucas followed, flashlight in one hand, the warrantless authority of desperation in the other. Inside, the place was silent except for the faint tick of clocks. Hundreds of them, hanging on walls, sitting on shelves, each marking a slightly different second. The sound filled the space like a heartbeat, multiplied. Rex sniffed along the floor, tail flicking back and forth. He paused near the back corner, where a stack of rags and tools lay scattered. He sniffed again, then barked sharply once, a sound that cracked through the stillness. Lucas hurried over, crouching beside him. The air reeked of burnt oil and metal shavings, sharp enough to sting the nose. He brushed aside the rags, revealing a small workbench stained with grease. On it sat a dismantled camera module, the kind used for security systems. Jesus, Lucas whispered. He did it here. He lifted the small lens carefully, his gloves smudged with black residue. You clever bastard, he muttered. You really thought you could control every second, didn't you? Rex let out a low growl, head tilted toward the doorway. Lucas froze, listening. Nothing but the ticking. Relentless. Overlapping. Mocking. He exhaled slowly. Relax, boy. He's not here. He looked around the workshop once more. Every clock told a different story. One running fast, one slow, one stopped completely. Time fractured. Rewritten. Scattered. Lucas pocketed a sample of the burnt oil and looked down at Rex. We've got him, he said softly. Now we just have to make the rest of the world believe it. Rex barked once, a short, confident sound. As they stepped back into the fading daylight, Lucas glanced at his wrist. The broken watch Emma had given him still rested there, unmoving. Its silent hands pointed to 9:47, a reminder that truth, no matter how long it hides, always stops pretending. Eventually, the night stretched deep and endless over the town, swallowing the last hints of light. Rain lashed against the windows of Lucas's small apartment, turning the glass into shifting rivers. Inside, only a single lamp burned. The same lamp that had witnessed too many sleepless nights, too many unanswered questions. The files lay open across his desk once more, pages curling from the damp air. Photographs, statements, timelines, all leading to the same man, Victor Halden. A man who could fix time, bend it, manipulate it, and yet walk free because of it. Lucas sat slumped in his chair, elbows on the desk, head in his hands. The rhythm of the rain outside echoed the beating of his heart, heavy and uneven. The evidence, the broken watch, the tampered camera. It was all there. But not enough. Never enough. He stared at the cracked face of the watch lying beside him. 9:47. Always. 9:47. His reflection trembled in the glass. Tired eyes, unshaven jaw. The face of a man who'd lost more than he could admit. He whispered into the emptiness. You were right there. I should have seen it. I should have known. The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was full. Full of regret, of ghosts, of all the seconds he'd wasted believing the case was closed. Rex sat quietly at his side, chin resting on Lucas's knee. The dog didn't move, didn't speak, didn't need to. His presence was the only constant in a world that kept shifting. Lucas reached down, fingers threading through the dog's fur. The warmth there steadied him more than any words could. You remember that night, don't you? He said softly. The river, the bench, the smell of oil. You tried to tell me. I just didn't listen. Rex lifted his head, pressing his nose gently against Lucas's hand. His eyes, calm, knowing, reflected the flicker of the desk lamp. Yeah, Lucas whispered, voice cracking. You're the only one who never lost faith. The sound of the rain grew heavier, thunder murmuring somewhere far off. Lucas leaned back, closing his eyes. The fatigue pressed down on him like a weight. He didn't hear the first ring of the phone. It was the second, shrill, insistent, that snapped him upright. He grabbed the receiver. Keller. There was panic on the other end, a woman's voice trembling. Officer Keller, it's me, Emma's mother. His heartbeat stumbled. What's wrong? She spoke quickly, breath uneven. He's here. The man who gave Emma the watch. He's outside. I saw him through the window. Lucas was already on his feet, grabbing his coat and keys. Stay inside. Lock the doors. Don't go near the windows. Please, hurry. The line went dead. Rex was already standing, tense, hackles raised. Lucas clipped on his leash even though the dog didn't need it. Let's move, he said. The storm had turned the streets into mirrors of black glass. Lightning flashed, cutting across the sky, followed by a growl of thunder that seemed to shake the ground itself. Lucas's car tore through puddles, the wipers struggling to keep up. Each drop that hit the windshield felt like a ticking second, a countdown he couldn't afford to lose. He turned onto the street where Emma's family lived. The house appeared ahead, lights blazing in every window. Shadows moved behind the curtains. Rex whined, sensing the urgency. Lucas's hands gripped the steering wheel tighter. Not this time, he muttered. We won't be too late this time. He slammed the car door and ran. Rain soaking through his clothes instantly. Rex bounded ahead, fur slicked to his body, eyes sharp and searching. Emma's mother opened the door before Lucas could knock. Her face was pale, hair clinging to her cheeks. He was right there, she gasped, pointing toward the driveway. I saw him standing near the garage, watching the house. Then he was gone. Inside, Lucas ordered. Lock it behind us. He moved quickly, sweeping the yard with his flashlight. The rain blurred everything into streaks of silver and shadow. Rex, find him. The dog lowered his head, sniffing along the ground. He moved with purpose, circling once, twice, then darted toward the side of the house, where the garage door hung slightly open. He barked sharply, once. Lucas sprinted after him. The beam of the flashlight caught muddy footprints leading away from the door, out toward the narrow alley behind the property. The prints were fresh, water pooling in them but not yet filling. Damn it! Lucas cursed, running forward. But the alley was empty. Just the hum of the rain and the flicker of a dying streetlight. Whoever had been there was gone. Rex growled low, the sound vibrating in his chest. Lucas looked around desperately. He's close. He was just here. Then he saw it. Something small glinting near the edge of the driveway. He knelt, brushing away the wet leaves. Another watch lay half buried in the mud. But this one wasn't broken. It ticked loudly, the rhythm sharp and deliberate against the soft patter of rain. Tick, tick, tick. Lucas lifted it slowly, staring at the steady movement of the second hand. The same make, the same engraving. But unlike the first, this one was alive. He felt a chill creep up his spine. The watch's time read 10:02 p.m., only minutes after Emma's mother had called. He's mocking us, Lucas whispered. He's resetting time. Rex growled again, staring into the darkness beyond the alley. Lucas followed his gaze but saw nothing, only rain and shadows. Still, the feeling of being watched pressed against the back of his neck. He slipped the new watch into an evidence bag, sealing it carefully. The sound of its ticking filled the silence. Relentless. Cruel. Emma's mother appeared in the doorway, clutching her robe. Is he gone? Lucas forced a reassuring nod. For now. But he'll be back. He's playing with us. She looked at him, eyes wide with fear. Why would he come here? Lucas hesitated, then quietly, because this time, The clock is running out for him. He glanced down at Rex, who stood unmoving, eyes fixed on the shadows where the footprints disappeared. Rainwater dripped from his muzzle, but he didn't flinch. "Come on, partner," Lucas said softly. "We're not done yet." They walked back toward the car, the storm easing into a steady drizzle. Behind them, the lights of Emma's house glowed like a fragile promise of safety. Inside Lucas's pocket, the new watch continued to tick, louder than the rain. A heartbeat of mockery, a reminder that the man they hunted was no longer just manipulating evidence. He was controlling time itself, daring them to catch up before it betrayed them again. And Lucas knew, deep down, that if they didn't move fast, time wouldn't just betray the truth. It would bury it. The storm came without warning, a roar of wind and thunder that turned the forest into a living, breathing thing. Lightning cracked open the sky, painting the wet branches in flashes of silver. Beneath the chaos, police radios crackled through the downpour, voices overlapping as teams spread through the woods like shadows chasing ghosts. Lucas moved at the front of the line, coat plastered to his back, breath misting in the cold air. Rex trotted ahead, the leash slack, nose pressed to the soaked earth. Rain drummed on his back, but the dog didn't falter. His movements were sharp, focused, each sniff a question, each pause a clue. "East perimeter's clear!" someone shouted behind them. Another voice answered through the static. "No sign near the riverbank." Lucas didn't slow. His boots sank into the mud, every step a reminder of how close they were, and how easily the night could swallow their chance. The air was thick with the smell of wet bark, gunpowder, and oil, a bitter scent that cut through the rain like a wound reopening. Rex's ears flicked. He stopped suddenly, head snapping to the right. Lucas froze. "You got something?" Rex let out a sharp bark, then pressed forward, pulling the leash taut. Lucas followed, ducking under low branches as thunder rolled overhead. The beam of his flashlight wavered over roots and puddles, catching glimpses of boot prints half filled with rainwater. He called into his radio, "Unit 4 to all teams. We've got a trail heading northeast toward the old mill." Static. Then, "Copy that. Back up en route." But Lucas barely heard it. He was already running, heart pounding. As they pushed deeper into the woods, memory collided with the moment, flashes in his mind as vivid as lightning. The file photos of Elena's smile, the riverbank bathed in blue lights, the broken watch Emma had placed in Rex's paw. Her voice echoed through the storm. "It doesn't tick, so time can't take it away." The words twisted in his chest, sharper than the rain. Rex barked again, louder this time. Lucas caught up, crouching low to see. There. Fresh footprints, cutting through the mud toward the east ridge. The smell of engine oil grew stronger. "He's close," Lucas whispered. "Find him, boy. For her." The dog's muscles tensed. Then he was off, a blur of motion against the dark, leaping over fallen logs and splashing through puddles. Lucas chased after him, lungs burning, rain stinging his face. "Rex, easy," he shouted, but the storm swallowed his voice. They broke through the tree line and into a clearing. There, standing against the skeletal outline of the abandoned mill, was a figure, drenched, trembling, half wild in the flashing light. Victor Halden. He clutched something in his hand, small, metallic, gleaming whenever lightning struck. A watch, another one. "Stop!" Lucas shouted, leveling his flashlight. "Victor, it's over!" The man turned, eyes wide and desperate, The rain slicked his face, washing away the calm, polished mask he'd worn for months. "Stay back," he cried. "I didn't mean for any of this to happen," Rex growled, lowering his stance, waiting for the command. Lucas took a slow step forward. "Then tell me what you meant to do," he said, voice steady despite the adrenaline. Victor's hand shook. She found out. About the clocks. About the timestamps. I just wanted to scare her. But she fell, and she hit her head. I swear I didn't. Lightning flashed again, cutting his face in half. One side shadow, one side guilt. "You killed her," Lucas said quietly. "Then you built an alibi from lies and gears." Victor laughed bitterly, voice breaking. "You think I wanted this? I was fixing time. I was making things right." "By stopping it for her?" Lucas demanded. "By making sure no one could prove when she died?" For a moment, the storm itself seemed to hold its breath. The rain softened to a whisper. Victor lowered his gaze. The watch in his hand ticked, loud, defiant. "I tried to turn it back," he murmured. "Just a few minutes. Enough to save her. Enough to save me." Rex barked, breaking the silence. Lucas's finger tightened on the flashlight. He took another step. "You can't turn back time, Victor." The man looked up, eyes gleaming with madness and sorrow. "No. But I can stop it again." He turned suddenly, bolting toward the mill. "Rex, go!" Lucas shouted. The shepherd lunged forward, a streak of muscle and instinct, paws splashing through the mud, claws scraping against the wooden ramp as he disappeared into the dark doorway after the fleeing man. Lucas followed, breath ragged, boots hammering the boards. Inside, the mill was a skeleton of rotting beams and broken machinery. The air smelled of rust and decay, overpowered by the metallic tang of fear. The beam of his flashlight cut through dust and rain leaking from the ceiling. "Victor!" he called. "Don't make this worse!" A sound came from the far end, metal crashing against wood. Then Victor's voice, echoing, raw. "You don't understand. Time isn't what you think it is." "Then tell me!" Lucas shouted back. "Tell me before it runs out!" There was a pause, just long enough for Lucas to think the man might surrender. But then, movement. Victor, stumbling backward through a doorway, clutching the watch like a weapon. "Stay back!" he yelled again. "It wasn't supposed to stop! None of it was supposed to stop!" Rex emerged from the shadows, low and silent, eyes locked on him. Lucas raised a hand. "Easy, boy. Not yet." The sound of rain filtered through the broken roof. The mill creaked under the weight of the storm. Victor's breath came in ragged bursts. "I didn't mean to kill anyone," he whispered again, voice trembling. "I just wanted more time." Lucas took one step closer, rain dripping from his hair, the light catching both men, the hunter and the hunted, frozen between guilt and justice. "Then do the right thing," Lucas said. "End this." Victor's fingers loosened around the watch. For a moment, it seemed like he might drop it. But instead, he looked at Lucas with hollow eyes and said softly, "Time doesn't forgive anyone, officer." Then, he turned and ran deeper into the mill. "Rex!" Lucas barked. The dog shot forward again, vanishing into the dark after the fleeing man. The storm howled louder, shaking the building's frame. Lucas followed without hesitation, his flashlight beam slicing through the gloom, a streak of light chasing the truth through a night that refused to end. And somewhere inside the echo of thunder, a single watch kept ticking, louder than the storm itself. Inside the mill, The storm was a living creature. Wind screamed through broken rafters, rattling old machinery that groaned like bones grinding together. The beam of Lucas's flashlight sliced through dust and rain, catching glimpses of rusted gears, twisted chains, and shattered glass. Somewhere ahead, footsteps echoed, rapid, uneven, desperate. "Victor!" Lucas's voice cut through the chaos. "Don't do this!" The only answer was the clatter of metal and the rhythmic ticking of the watch Victor still held. It echoed unnaturally in the hollow space, mocking, steady, like the heartbeat of something that refused to die. Rex darted forward, paws splashing through puddles on the warped wooden floor. Lucas followed, gun drawn, breath sharp in his throat. He turned a corner just as lightning flared through the cracks in the wall, enough to illuminate the suspect's face. Victor Halden stood near the center of the room, drenched, trembling, eyes fever-bright. His free hand gripped a knife, the blade flashing silver in the flickering light. "You think you can arrest me?" Victor's voice cracked between hysteria and exhaustion. "You think time cares about your badges and papers?" Lucas steadied his aim. "It's over. Drop the weapon." Victor shook his head violently. "No, it's never over. I tried to fix it, to make it stop, but it kept moving." He slammed the watch against a beam. "It kept moving." "Put it down," Lucas said, stepping closer. "You can still end this the right way." But something in Victor's eyes shifted. Rage, grief, maybe both. "There's no right way left!" he screamed, lunging. The motion was fast, the glint of the blade faster. Lucas barely had time to react before a blur of fur and muscle shot past him. "Rex!" The German shepherd launched himself between them, teeth bared, colliding with Victor mid-strike. The knife flashed, once, then sank deep. The sound that followed wasn't thunder, though it felt just as violent. Lucas's scream tore through the mill as Rex yelped, collapsing into the mud and splinters. "Rex!" Lucas fired, the shot ringing out, ricocheting off metal beams. Victor stumbled backward, the knife slipping from his grasp, clattering onto the floor. He tried to run, but Lucas was already there, rage and heartbreak driving him forward. The two men collided, crashing into a pile of rusted chains. Lucas's fist connected once, twice, years of frustration and guilt exploding in a blur of motion. Victor fought back wildly, clawing, shouting, his words dissolving into madness. "You can't stop time," he spat, grabbing for the fallen knife. "You can't undo it." Lucas slammed his arm against the wall, forcing the weapon free. "Maybe not," he growled, "but I can stop you." With a final strike, Victor went down, breathing hard, the fight draining out of him like the color from his face. Lucas cuffed him with trembling hands, chest heaving. Then silence, only rain, and the faint ticking of the fallen watch. He turned. Rex lay a few feet away, half in shadow. The fur around his shoulder was dark with blood, the puddle beneath him spreading too fast. The flashlight flickered on the dog's flank, rising and falling with shallow breaths. Lucas stumbled to his side, dropping the gun, the badge, everything. "No, no, no, no." He pressed his hands against the wound, fingers slick with warmth that shouldn't be leaving. "Stay with me, boy. You hear me? You stay." Rex's eyes fluttered open, glassy but aware. He gave a small whine, tail twitching weakly. Lucas bent closer, forehead pressed against the dog's. "You did it," he whispered, voice shaking. "You found him. You saved me. The sirens in the distance began to wail, faint at first, then growing louder, closer. The red-blue pulse reflected off the rain-slicked walls, like the heartbeat of a world finally catching up to justice. Lucas lifted his wrist. The broken watch Emma had given him still sat there, its glass cracked, its hands forever frozen at 9:47. He looked at it, then at Rex. "Remember this, partner?" he murmured. "You stopped time once. Guess we did it again." Rex's gaze moved, slow, deliberate, toward the watch. His breathing hitched. Lucas could feel the tremor of life fading beneath his touch. "No," he said, panic rising. "No, stay with me. We're going home, you hear? We're going home." The rain softened, the storm breaking apart into mist. In the distance, lights glowed through shattered windows as officers approached. Lucas didn't move. He held Rex tighter, rocking slightly, the way one might hold something sacred. "Good boy," he whispered through tears. "You did so good." Rex's eyes, still fixed on the watch, blinked once more, slow, peaceful. Then he exhaled, a breath more sigh than sound. His body went still. For a long moment, Lucas didn't realize the watch on his wrist had begun to tremble. The loose second hand, long, unmoving, quivered, then stopped completely. 9:47. The time of death, the time of truth, the time everything both began and ended. Lucas stayed there until the sirens arrived, until voices called his name, until hands pulled Victor away and lights painted the rain. But none of it reached him. He looked down at his partner, his friend, and saw in that stillness the cost of every second he'd ever taken for granted. The storm had passed, but the silence it left behind was louder than thunder. He pressed his forehead against Rex's one last time. "We did it," he whispered. "You can rest, now." Outside, dawn began to break, the first light bleeding over the horizon. But inside the mill, time had stopped. Exactly where it was always meant to. The seasons had changed. Where rain once drowned the world in gray, sunlight now filtered through the bare branches, like forgiveness finally daring to return. The case that had consumed months of Lucas's life was over. The papers called it the Timekeeper's Trial, a name that would outlive everyone involved. In the end, the truth had come apart slowly, gear by gear, until there was nothing left to hide. Victor Halden confessed. He confessed in a trembling voice, to falsifying timestamps, to moving clocks, to staging his own alibi. But most of all, he confessed to what he couldn't change, the moment his rage had turned fatal. The watch, the one Emma had given to Rex, matched perfectly with the forensic report. Microscopic traces of Elena's blood were still caught inside the cracked glass. That single silent object, frozen at 9:47 p.m., had spoken louder than any courtroom argument. Now, months later, Lucas stood in the small police courtyard where a simple memorial had been built. The stone was smooth and unadorned, save for the engraving. Rex, K9, Unit Number 241. He stopped time for justice. The words caught the sunlight, gleaming faintly like the badge embedded beneath them. Rex's badge. Lucas's uniform was crisp, but his hands trembled as he held a small bouquet of white lilies. He had faced criminals, storms, even death, but this still felt harder. He placed the flowers at the base of the stone, the cool marble reflecting the blue of the morning sky. For a long while he said nothing. The air was still, broken only by the gentle hum of distant city life and the flutter of flags at half-mast. He could still feel the leash in his hand sometimes, phantom weight, muscle memory that refused to fade. At night, he'd still glance at the door, expecting the sound of claws on the floor, the thump of a loyal tail. Old habits, he thought, like waiting for time to start again. Footsteps approached softly behind him. When he turned, Emma stood there, clutching a handful of daisies nearly as big as her small hands. She'd grown taller since that first morning in the park, but her smile was still the same, bright enough to cut through the heaviness around him. She walked up quietly, eyes wide as she looked at the stone. "This is where he rests?" she asked. Lucas nodded. "Yeah, right here." His voice was gentle, steady in a way he'd practiced, but didn't feel. Emma knelt, setting her daisies beside his lilies. The wind played with her hair, lifting stray strands across her face. "Mama says he was a hero." "He was," Lucas said, "the bravest I've ever known." She looked up, her voice small but certain. "He was brave, wasn't he?" Lucas's throat tightened. He forced a smile. "Yes, he was. He stopped time for justice." Emma touched the stone softly, tracing the letters of Rex's name. "Does he miss you?" Lucas swallowed hard. "I think maybe he's still around, watching, making sure time doesn't run away from us again." She nodded, satisfied with that answer, in the simple, unquestioning way only a child could be. "Then I'll visit him sometimes, so he doesn't get lonely." Lucas smiled faintly. He'd like that. They stood together in silence, the weight of words unspoken resting gently between them. For a moment, the world didn't feel so cruel. A police car passed slowly beyond the gates, its siren muted, its reflection flashing across the polished stone like a heartbeat. Lucas watched it go, then looked down at the broken watch still strapped to his wrist. It hadn't worked since that night, but he hadn't replaced it. He couldn't. 9:47. The time everything changed. He ran his thumb over the cracked glass, remembering how Rex's eyes had flicked toward it in those final seconds, as if he'd known that some moments should never be allowed to move on. Emma's voice broke through his thoughts. "You still wear it?" she said softly. "Yeah," Lucas answered, looking at her. "It reminds me that even when time stops, what we do still matters." She smiled at that, and for the first time in months, Lucas felt something uncoil in his chest. Not peace, not yet, but something close. Emma looked back at the stone. "Do you think he can hear us?" Lucas tilted his head slightly, as if listening. The wind passed through the trees, rustling leaves in a whisper that almost sounded like an answer. "I think he can," Lucas said quietly. "I think he always could." She grinned, the kind of grin that could make the world new again. "Then I'll tell him thank you." She stood on tiptoe and whispered into the breeze, "Thank you, Rex." The words drifted upward, carried by the wind until they were lost in the hum of the city, or maybe found somewhere beyond it. When she turned to leave, Lucas stayed a moment longer. His eyes traced the engraved badge, the date beneath it, and the space where time had ended. But truth had begun. He whispered, "We did it, partner. She's safe." The town's quiet again. A soft breeze brushed his cheek, warm, almost like breath. He closed his eyes, let the silence wash over him, and for a moment, he could almost hear the faint sound of paws against pavement, the steady rhythm of a heartbeat beside his own. The church bell rang in the distance, marking the hour. Lucas didn't check his watch. He didn't need to. Time, for once, felt right. He turned to leave, the broken watch glinting on his wrist as sunlight caught the crack just right. A scar turned into a reflection. Behind him, the stone stood tall, daisies and lilies swaying gently in the wind. A reminder that some partnerships never end, and that sometimes stopping time is the only way to make justice last forever. The afternoon light slanted softly through the station windows, golden and calm. The kind of sunlight that carried no urgency, no sirens, no running footsteps, just warmth. The kind of light that belonged to endings, not beginnings. Lucas sat at his desk, surrounded by silence. The hum of distant conversation, the ring of phones, even the shuffle of paperwork. All of it faded into background noise. In front of him sat two things: a small glass case, freshly cleaned, and the broken watch that had once stopped a killer's perfect lie. Its hands were still frozen at 9:47. The crack across its face caught the sunlight, glinting like a scar that refused to fade. Beside it lay Rex's collar, the polished brass tag still faintly scratched from years of service. Lucas turned the watch over in his palm, feeling the weight of it, lighter than he remembered, and yet somehow heavier. Every second it refused to move carried a story: the case, the chase, the loss, the loyalty. He exhaled slowly. You stopped time for both of us, didn't you, partner? There was a soft knock at the door. When he looked up, Emma stood in the doorway, clutching something behind her back. She'd grown since the day at the park. Her hair was longer, her eyes wiser, but still filled with that same light that refused to be dimmed by tragedy. "Hi, Officer Lucas," she said, stepping inside. He smiled faintly. "Emma, what brings you here?" She hesitated for a moment, then brought her hands forward. In them was a drawing, folded neatly, colored with the uneven strokes of a child's hand. "I made this for you," she said. Lucas took it carefully, unfolding it. The paper smelled faintly of crayons and daisies. His breath caught. It was Rex, drawn proudly, standing tall, with a pair of angel wings spread wide. Between his paws, he held a clock, but it had no hands. Beneath the drawing, in careful, uneven letters, she'd written, "Now time can't hurt him." Lucas didn't speak. He couldn't. His throat tightened, and he blinked hard against the sting behind his eyes. Emma looked up, earnest. "Mama said sometimes when people go away, we can't stop missing them. But I thought maybe if time stopped too, then he wouldn't be gone. Not really." Lucas smiled. The kind of smile that trembles. The kind that comes from a heart breaking and healing all at once. "You're right," he whispered. "Now time can't hurt him." He knelt beside her, the sunlight catching the silver threads in his hair. "You know," he said softly, "I think Rex would have liked that drawing." "You think so?" she asked. "I know so," he said. She smiled, the simple, unguarded kind that reminded him of the first day he'd met her. Daisies in her hands, innocence in her eyes, A broken watch she called a gift. Lucas turned toward the glass case on his desk. Slowly, reverently, he placed the broken watch inside, next to Rex's collar. The two pieces of his partner, one that had stopped time and one that had once chased it, now lay side by side. He closed the case with a soft click. "Will it stay there forever?" Emma asked. "Yes," Lucas said quietly. "It'll remind everyone who walks in here what it means to be brave and what it means to care." She tilted her head. "Even if time moves on." He looked down at her, his eyes kind. "Especially if it does." They stood together in the golden light, the glass case gleaming softly between them. Dust motes floated in the air like tiny constellations, slow and unhurried. Somewhere outside, a church bell chimed, each note clear, unbroken, steady. Emma looked once more at the drawing in Lucas's hand. "You can keep it," she said. "For him." "I will," Lucas promised. He placed the picture beside the case, letting the paper lean gently against the glass, so that Rex's angel wings reflected faintly in the light. The colors shimmered, blues and yellows and soft white, merging with the gold of the afternoon sun. For a long time, Lucas just watched the way the light played across the glass. The ticking of nearby clocks, all working, all moving forward, felt distant, like echoes from another life. Then, the narrator's voice, soft, reflective, timeless, seemed to fill the room. Sometimes, it's not the ticking of time that tells the truth. It's the moments that stand still, the love, the loss, and the loyalty that never fades. Outside, the world continued. Cars passing, laughter spilling from the nearby cafe, the ordinary rhythm of life moving on. But inside the quiet office, time held its breath. The final light of day slid across the glass, touching the watch face one last time. The fractured crystal caught the sun and threw it back in 1,000 tiny sparks. And there it was, the image that would linger long after the story faded, the broken watch, glinting in the sunlight, frozen forever at the hour justice was found. Some stories stay with us not because of how they end, but because of what they remind us to feel. Lucas and Rex's journey isn't just about solving a case. It's about love, loyalty, and the bond between two souls who never gave up on each other. German shepherds have a way of teaching us that devotion doesn't need words. It's found in quiet moments, in trust, and in the courage to stand beside someone, no matter what comes. If this story touched you, maybe it's a good time to look a little closer at the dog beside you, to notice how much they already understand, how deeply they already love. Take a moment today. Go for a walk, offer an extra pat, or just sit quietly together. You might be surprised by how much your heart listens when time stands still.